All right, welcome back. We're going to be creating the same scriptable objects on the server. We're going to upload them from the client here. And then when you start the game, we're going to have it so the payload gets downloaded from the server. So let's get started. The first ones that we need to create are these blocks. So if I look at Gem Wars on the back end, come on. Okay, so on the back end, we're going to start creating these objects. So the first one is called blocks blue. So I'm going to create a new entity. And I want to call it a block. And that's going to be a base entity. And we're going to make it a public class. Now in this, it's going to have an ID, which gets automatically assigned. And then it's going to have a sprite here. That sprite, we want to make this a URL to the sprite. So this is going to be a URI sprite URI. And then additionally, what we want to have on here is the color. So under enums, I'm going to create a new block enum, public enum block color. And we're going to have, and these need to be in the same order, so I think that's it. Purple, green, let me double check. Yeah, purple, green, red. Orange, blue, yellow. That's it for these. If I was to look at my base scriptable object, I want this instance ID to be protected. And then I want to have a string called instance ID. Like that. Okay, we're going to change these to be the new one. And that's that. So now on the back end again, we're going to add another class, which is called block gems. And this is also going to have a sprite URI. And then also a block color. And I'm going to call this a tile color. Or a gem. No, that's okay. And these are connected because a block has any number of block gems, or I'm connecting it by color. Well, the thing about this is that these are being selected based on the we'll have to look again here. I think it's under gem chances. No. Where are block gems being used? on gem. That's how those could connect. Okay, so we're going to wait on block gems, and we're going to add gem instead. Gem is a base entity, which is going to have a URI, an ID, a gem type, and then a collection of block gem. So in my enums, now I'm going to add a new gem type. Diamond, ruby, emerald. Sapphire, amber, amethysts. Okay. And this block gem is now also going to have a type of GUID called gem ID, and then a gem. The gem is also going to have a points. Okay. The next one is going to be a, come on there, microphone. All right, the next one's going to be a, we did block gems. The next one is called a board. And a board is going to have a integer for the index, a integer for my number of lines to progress. It's going to have a board size X, a board size Y, a number draws, it's a float called AI turn interval in seconds, and then a float called AI turn interval offset. Okay, the next one is called color chances. So color chance. And the only thing that this one has is a float for the percent chance, and then a tier type, which we need to add in here, in enums, called a public enum tier type. And that's going to go tier 1 through 6. The next one is called a draw piece. And this is going to have a draw type, a draw piece color type, and then also a draw piece gem type. So in enums, I want to have a draw type enum, which is going to be piece, a draw piece color type, which is random, same color 2, same color 3, same color 4, a draw piece gem type, which is none, single, same, gem 2, 3, and 4. The next one is a draw chance. It's a gem chance. And this is going to have a tier type on it. And also a float for the percent chance. We're almost done. The next one is a piece. And that's going to have a piece type, which we haven't defined yet. A integer for the number of pieces. A integer for my points for placement. And that's going to be OJLS. OJLS. ZTI single. Duo. Trio S, Trio L, and Trio R. Okay, we have another one called rewards. And this is going to be called a reward type, which we don't have yet. A quantity colors. and a points. Lines, colors, gems. However, this one is actually a reward color like that. So there's reward color, reward gems, which is quantity gems, and then my point modifier, which is a float. And the last one is a reward line, which is a number lines and a points. Okay, the very last one is called rounds. And that's a base entity. We want to have here the index, a integer for my number of draws, and then we want to have an I collection of a color chance called color chances. And then we're going to do the same thing for a gem chance. Which means that a color chance is going to have a round ID, and a gem chance is going to have a round ID. And that's it. So in our application database context, we're going to add our new types, which is we're going to have a DB set here of a block called blocks, a new DB set here of a block gem called block gems, another DB set of a board called boards, another one called color chance, another one called draw piece, Another one called gems. Another one called gem chance. Another one called piece. Another one called rewards. And another one called round. Okay, we need to add some indexes. So is there a thing now called index? So on block, I want to say that it has an index on block color. Like that. The next one is going to be a block gem. And that's going to have an index of a block color and a gem ID. So if I look here at Entity Framework Core, we want multiple, we want a composite index. So I do it like a new and I want to do this for a gem ID and an x.color. Okay, the next one is the board. And you want to do that for the on the index. Okay, the next one is color chance. And this is going to be for a and it's going to be a x.roundID and then also a tier type. The next one is a draw piece. This one's straightforward. It's going to be for a draw type, a draw piece color type, and a draw piece gem type. The next one is gem. Which is going to have an index of gem type. Hey, Axpend, how are you doing? Welcome to the channel. If you have any questions, make sure you pop them into the chat. Also, all these videos for this project and many others are up at youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com. Thanks so much for coming hanging out today. What's going on with my microphone cable? Come on. There we go. Okay. We're going to add this one again here for a gem chance. And that's going to be on a round ID and a tier type. And the next one is a piece. Which is on piece type. The next one is on a reward. Now, it doesn't quite work like this because you're going to have a reward color, which is going to have one index. Which is going to be on your reward type, and then also your quantity colors. You're going to have another one for reward gem. And then you're going to have another one for a reward line, which is a number of lines. And the last one here is round, which only has index. Hey, Great Gamer. Welcome back, man. It's good to see you. How are you doing? It's been a little bit. Now we're going to set this as my startup project. Go to my code first and do a add migration, and we're going to say added unique indexes. Indices. I'm doing good. Thank you. How are you? I'm doing great. I've revamped most all of the projects except Ali Chat. We started this one just a few not very long ago. The videos are up at YouTube. Yeah, that's pretty much me. We got that. We got that. Give that another try. Thanks. Now we'll update our database. When I look at the database, now we have all of our game objects here. And if I look here, I should have 3 different keys or indices. On rewards, and I do. So now I can close this up, and what I want to do is start my backend again. Not yet. We're just going to get it ready. And now I'm going to start to post these objects across. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a new controller in here. And I want to call it a gameobjects controller. And I'm going to make this a base controller type with authorize. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my first asynchronous task called it's a action result type. And we're going to say it's called post blocks asynchronous. Okay? And this is going to be passed across in something I call a game object container. So let's create that model down here. And we're going to call it a game object container. And inside of this, I want it to be an array of data. Game object container. You never heard of that before? I'm making it all myself here. So I want to get my application user. And then what I want to do is if my application user does not equal to null, I want to make sure that I have this in the role. So in my base controller, we need to find all these references real quick, because all the places where it is awaiting. It's perfect. So on my base controller, I want to have a new function here, which is called protected asynchronous task of a bool is in role asynchronous of a role. So it's all your own words that I'm guessing. For the roles, I created this authorization claim handler which makes sure that the role claims are in the user information. So I should be able to call a claim here as a claim requirement, and that's what we're going to test. So I may not need this function because I should be able to do a roles admin. Now it says that that's not an attribute class. So we'll go back just a little bit then, back to where it was authorized. And when I post this, we're going to add that to the base controller. And this is going to be a protected virtual asynchronous task of a bool called isInRole asynchronous of a string called role. So I'm first going to get my access token from my headers where my key is equal to authorization. And I want to get the first one of the values and split it by a space, and then we want to get the second part of that, which is the access token. And then I want to get the discovery endpoint, which is a HTTP client. So here I want to say using HTTP, we're going to say client equals new HTTP client. And we want to get the discovery endpoint from the globals.identity server. And then I want to get my user info client from my get user info asynchronous. And the request is going to come from my address is the discovery.authorize endpoint, user info endpoint. And my token is going to be my access token. And now what I want to do is for each var claim in user info dot claims dot where my type dot trim dot toLower is equal to role. If my claim dot value dot trim dot toLower is equal to my role dot trim dot toLower, I want to return true. And otherwise, if we get all the way through that, we're going to return false. So here I want to say if my await is in role of my admin, and we can double check that up here at my seed data, admin role, admin. Make sure that on the front end, we are also requesting, come on there, HTTP manager roles. Then what I want to do is I want to have a, come on, var log equals get log, and this one's going to be a blocks post and then we're going to have a try and a catch, and it's going to be a var block equals await my data access layer dot. When I look at this function, we're going to make a new one called create block, which is a block create request. And then a block DTO. And you actually want to pass this in as a game object container. And we're going to say that this is create blocks if my await data access layer dot commit async is true, then you want to await my write log asynchronous, which is going to be HTTP status code dot OK. We're going to pass in the log. That's just called write log. Write log API, await data access layer dot commit asynchronous. Then we're going to return OK my blocks. Otherwise, we're going to do a write log API bad request, and then do a await data access layer dot commit async, and then return a bad request of my blocks. And otherwise, we're going to do a write log API of a internal server error. And then a write log error, which is a exception and my application user.id. And then on await data access layer dot commit async, and then you want to return a status code of a HTTP. It's a integer. My HTTP status code dot internal server error. Okay, now we need to add this new block DTO. Which is these two properties. But we don't need the sprite URI because that comes from the front end. So we can just get rid of that one like that. And now in my auto mapper, I want to add in here a create map from my block to a block DTO. Okay, we're going to test this. We need to fix a couple of functions. The first one is that this wants me to create a new function called create blocks. And when I do this, I want to have a entities to add, and then another one called entities to update. And then for each item in my request.data, I want to deserialize that into a block create request. Of my item. This is called JSON convert. And then what I want to do is I want to look for my entity where my ID equals deserialize.id and it's active. This is a virtual asynchronous task. We need to add in here a new base game object request, which needs to have a GUID called ID. And so now if it can find that, so this also needs to have a byte array on it called image or sprite. And so now if your deserialize.image.length is greater than 0, then we want to do a using var memstream equals new memory stream. And that's going to be called my deserialize.sprite. And then I want to say image.fromStream of my memstream. And then here I want to say upload to S3 here. This image comes from system_drawing.image. So on my data access layer, I want to install package system.drawing.image. We'll add in the NuGet package. And then here we can say to do Rob upload to S3. And now that that's done, I want to say if my entity is equal to null, then I want to do a entities to add a new one of these. And this is a block which has a block color. and then a sprite URI. Otherwise, you want to do a you want to update this entity here. And you want to say your block color equals deserialize.blockColor. And then your sprite URI is equal to deserialized.sprite URI. Like that. Like that. And then when we're all said and done down here, I want to do a context.addRange entities to add. And then in the end, I want to do a update range of my entities.toUpdate. And now what I want to do is a for each var item in my entities to add. And this is going to be a block DTO now. I want to do a DTOs.add a mapper.map of my block DTO to my item, which we can call entity. And then we want to do the same for the updates. And then I want to return here my DTOs.toArray. Like that. Hey there, demo. I'm doing good. How are you doing, man? It's good to have you with us. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to try posting these blocks. So in our front end, I'm going to create a new class in here. And I'm going to call it gameobject container. And in this, all I want it to have is a array of strings called data. And I want to make this serializable. So now when I post this, I'm going to have a public static asynchronous task of my block, or we'll just call it a bool, just a task. And I'm going to say this is post blocks asynchronous. Now, when I do this, I want to have a copy of my asset database. So when I go for each item in my asset database dot scriptable objects dot of type block so, I want to make a create request for that. So that's going to be called a block create request, which is a block color called block color and a string called ID. And we want that to be serializable. And now I want to make a new request here. Which is going to be a block color and a ID. And I want to have a new list here of a string for my JSONs. And then all I'm going to do is a JSONs.add JSON utility.serialize to JSON of my request. So that we're going to say that this is data prep. And this one's going to be called data transmission. Been trying to figure out a way to create a procedural world generation from scratch. That stuff is hard. Yeah, there's some stuff out there. I think one's called like World Builder. There's a bunch of things out there that'll help you, so you don't have to kind of like write everything yourself because it's complicated. And now what I want to do is I want to say if my await is token valid asynchronous, then what I want to do is we're going to make a payload here by sending this new game object container this data. And now what I want to do is I want to make a post to my game objects blocks. And I want to pass in my payload. And if my response is okay, I think that that's all I need to do. So here we can do this as a protected or a private, and then I can have a public static asynchronous task called post all data asynchronous. And so now in my title manager, I want to do an await HTTP manager.post all data. Async. And so on my global manager, I want to make a private static asset database SO called asset database. Let's make it a public. Like that. And then we'll post everything. So we'll look, start the backend. Same issue here. Okay, we'll run it. It says failed to load API definitions because up here in my gameobjects controller, this needs to be HTTP post, and then the route needs to be blocks. That time Swagger fired. Everything looks good. We'll try it from the front end. Okay, we're getting the payload. That looks right. It says token valid. Okay, but I never posted to the back end, did it? It's game objects. Dot blocks. Data, string array, let me do debug.log of my payload right here. Because I think when you post this, I just want to post the request object, which is this. Let's try it again. So it's as if it never even got here. Okay, let's see what's happening here. Token valid, posting all data, invoking, so serializing is failing. It's like this is failing. Try it again. Asset database is valid. So we're going to say debug.log posting, or we're going to say adding to array. And this is going to say added. Something's failing here. It's like this of type block SO is never firing. So if I look at my asset database, they're right here. Of type block SO. Let's see what the count is. Why didn't it even do that? It's like this is failing. So it's like this is failing at scriptable objects. Can I run this on the main thread to see what's happening? So it's something that it's not able to get my blocks from the asset database. Well, I think that locked it up. Maybe I need to pass it here as a parameter. Another way, I got to stop for the day. Thanks for staying with me. If you have any questions, make sure you pop them into the chat at discord.pixelhorrorstudios.com. Also, I put all these videos up at youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com. Thanks again for staying with me today. We'll be back tomorrow morning. And yeah, we should have this all finished up by then. I'll post the update to the video. So thanks again. Have a good one, guys. Bye.